In today's joint practice against the Arizona Cardinals, the Broncos defense, they need to bully Kyler Murray and company. We'll go through what we want to see from this team here today on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. If you're not yet an everydayer, get on the train now. Become one by hitting that subscribe or that follow button wherever you get your podcast, so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. And it is joint practice Thursday here today as the Broncos and Arizona Cardinals will conduct a competitive scrimmage-like environment. We'll go through and tell you why the Broncos secondary and the defense, they need to pick on Kyler Murray here today in this joint practice. Plus, we'll go through why the Broncos wide receiving group, we want to see them make some plays against this young Arizona Cardinals secondary. And we'll go over some news and notes as well as Nik Bonitto missed practice once again on Wednesday. Could we see him here today for joint practices against the Cardinals? A lot to throw out there in today's episode of the show. Sayre, my friend, let's dive into it. Obviously, this is probably going to be the one day this week of practice where there are fireworks galore, because really Tuesday and Wednesday's practices, they were boring by design. They weren't as up-tempo or highly competitive because guess what? You just played a preseason game. Now you got a joint practice and another preseason game coming up. So you really got to reserve the energy and kind of ramp up to this joint practice here today. And let's start off with the defense. We want to see them wreak a little bit of havoc here on Kyler Murray and company.
Yeah, the defense needs to come out and bully this guy, bully the Arizona Cardinals offense, right? I mean, that's what we want to see them do all season long. So anytime a different team comes to Denver or anytime the Broncos go up against another team, man, that's what we want to see this defense do, is absolutely bully them. Now, we did not get that in the first preseason game against the 49ers. In fact, quite the opposite. It was Mac Jones and the 49ers offense, a 50-plus yard player, whatever that was, that set them up for a touchdown on the first drive of the preseason, left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And I think it's something that this defense is going to want to kind of come back from quickly. They got a chance to do it at joint practice against another team. And I think the most exciting aspect of this that I'm looking forward to, Cody, is, man, this secondary has been picking Bo Nix off. They've been picking Jarrett Stidham off. They've been picking on these young receivers, right? I mean, let's go do this to the Arizona Cardinals, right? To another level. Let's take it to another level because, like you said, the last couple of days haven't been as competitive because of this joint practice upcoming. So let's see these guys go out there and just, hey, be sticky. Go do your thing. Go take the ball away. Make the Cardinals go back to their drawing board, like we said with the 49ers, and just be completely frustrated about the way things went. Like, there has to be learning tape for the 49ers because they went up against the best secondary in the league.
Well, here's the dynamic that they're going to face here in this joint practice. And I don't know if the Cardinals starters are going to play in Saturday's preseason game, but, you know, when we are going to get this first look at them in this practice, Kyler Murray, as we all know, he's a mobile, athletic quarterback, can make plays happen outside the pocket. And look, usually at the beginning of the year, he's usually his healthiest and he's usually his fastest. How much are they going to try to get him to the outside, right? And I think that's where defensively your scramble drill philosophies are always going to apply. I think really your inside linebackers, they're going to be key for this specific practice against a quarterback like Kyler Murray here. And obviously we'll see if Dre Greenlaw participates in the team aspect of it because there has been this ramp up. He's been doing individual drills this week. Alex Singleton has been a full-going team. So we'll see Singleton obviously here today in this joint session against Arizona, but also as well, I mean, look at the dynamics of what the Broncos are going to be facing here. You have Trey McBride, who was a large volume target for Kyler Murray in this Cardinals offense last year. He got a nice little extension in the offseason. You got Marvin Harrison Jr., who's obviously we know is a very, very talented player. And then they got other guys like Greg Dortch in the mix there at the wide receiver position, Zay Jones, someone who the Broncos have gone against before, Simi Fehoko, and then Michael Wilson. Like, they have talented guys across the board here. And obviously James Conner at the running back position here. I mean, this is where you're going to get a really good look at maybe how the Broncos adjust to some things. This is where I am going to factor more of my evaluation is in this joint practice, because I do believe you can get a lot out of this, but the game speed and the game reps are going to be entirely different. Whereas we do want to see both the Broncos offense and the Broncos defense come out and have a little bit more an efficient showing here in Saturday in that game that plays obviously late on Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. But yeah, just a good challenge with some of the pieces here that Arizona has. This should be a fun matchup to watch between that Broncos secondary led by PS2 and Riley Moss, obviously Talanoa Hufanga, Brandon Jones, and then against these wide receivers and Kyler Murray. To me, the dynamic is going to be there to evaluate things clearly here.
And something that you mentioned is really going to stand out quite a bit from this practice. You mentioned the inside linebackers for Denver. Obviously, we don't exactly know who's going to be all out there on the practice field, but going up against Trey McBride and allowing Kyler Murray to, if he gets outside the pocket for any plays when they're doing team or 7-on-7, whatever it may be, that's going to be really interesting to hear how those matchups go, where Kyler's going to target Trey McBride. He's one of the best tight ends in the game today, and somebody that obviously a lot of Broncos fans know well because he played close by in college, and we wanted him in that draft and I think we ended up with Greg Dulcich. I think that was the same class, Cody, if memory serves me correctly. But I feel like this is a matchup that really is going to help kind of define that competition that's ongoing right behind Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton on the depth chart. Justin Sternad, Lavelle Bailey, those are the two guys right now that if the season started today and they had to play, that would be the two guys that'd be out there. So I want to hear about those two guys really making a lot of plays in coverage, right? We know Justin can attack the line of scrimmage. He was one of the best at doing it on the team last year with 8 tackles for loss. But I want to see these guys making plays in coverage against a great tight end, because I think the Broncos DBs are going to be able to lock up the receivers, right? Maybe not in one-on-ones, because that's kind of designed to favor the receiver. But in team drills, it's going to be that focus on the tight end position and how the Broncos are covering that tight end, specifically Trey McBride.
And look, I think as well, you get in these competitive periods. I will tell you this Broncos defense, they've made it like for Bo, when Bo has tried to get outside and scramble, the defense has been very good. I would say Jonathan Cooper, Nik Bonitto, Dondre Tillman, Jonah Ellis, these guys have done a terrific job of maintaining that edge contained. They're not letting anybody, not even running backs, get outside of them. That's an area that has been notably improved so far here in training camp practices. So I imagine, going into it, I think they know, okay, we know that Kyler Murray can scramble. So for Vance Joseph, I'm curious what his design will be, because they're not going to go out there and say, okay, this is the Vance Joseph defense. We're going to send 6 guys here. We're going to try to really blitz and get after Kyler Murray. It's a watered down vanilla version of all that. If you had to pick today going into like a matchup you want to see here between the Broncos secondary and this Cardinals offense, which matchup most intrigues you? Because for me, I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit more of that PS2 versus Marvin Harrison Jr. And I imagine they may not even move him around a lot. They may even have Riley Moss cover against Marvin Harrison Jr. as well, which I think would be an exciting challenge.
I think so too. I think as many times as the Broncos can get different guys on Marvin Harrison Jr., that's going to benefit them greatly. But also, you mentioned Dortch in the slot. That guy can get open quickly. And so that's going to help us maybe get some clarity on that slot competition that's been ongoing, where I know he gave up the big play in the preseason opener, Cody, but Jaquan McMillan, Pat Surtain was talking him up to Kay Adams. He's certainly came back with the interception against San Francisco, had an interception at the end of practice earlier this week. So feel like Jaquan is kind of slowly but surely kind of remaking his case for this depth chart and this team and his role on the team. So I'm excited to see how he does and how he continues to stack days, but Jahdae Barron as well in the slot and how these guys fare. But yeah, the premier, the marquee matchup is of course going to be whoever is up against Marvin Harrison Jr. And I hope that we do get to hear about Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, and even Chris Abrams-Drain going up against him in this practice.
Broncos Country, as practice is set to take place this morning here, joint session with the Cardinals. Let us know which matchup for the Broncos defense against Arizona's offense you're most looking forward to seeing and or hearing about. We'll obviously have a breaking news or a post-practice bonus episode for all of you here, Locked On Broncos as well. We're going to shift gears now to the offensive side of the ball. Why do we want to see the Broncos wide receivers here, the veterans, the young guys? Why do we want to see them make some plays here against this Cardinals young secondary? We'll highlight the guys that we have our eyes on here on today's episode of the show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy, and it's the best time of the year because NFL kickoff is almost here. And folks, you know that means that fantasy football is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. And make sure you join us this year because Sayre Bedinger, myself over here, Locked On Broncos, we are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or whether you're a veteran player who's joining their millionth league.
Absolutely. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for many, many years, dating back to high school. I mean, the updates that they're rolling out this month, they're wild in the best way. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. So to kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head, private leagues, or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. It's young on young as the Denver Broncos bring their wide receivers out against Arizona Cardinals defensive backs. And in joint practice, you want to see these receivers really stand out against other competitors coming in. And Cody and I are going to tell you why we want to see the wide receivers stand out, as well as what else to be looking out for as these two teams take each other on in joint practice. But Broncos Country, want to say we appreciate you so much for tuning in every single day to Locked On Broncos. Please, if you haven't done so already, take a couple seconds, hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Cody, let's talk about it. Young wide receivers going up against Arizona DBs. I kind of like this matchup just in general, whether we're talking about joint practice or the preseason game, because Arizona, roster building wise, kind of taking a similar tactic to what the Broncos have at the wide receiver position, right? Where at the wide receiver position, everybody's saying, got to go add somebody, need a veteran to come into the mix. And I was part of that. Sean Payton's like, no, we're going to go with the young guys. Jonathan Gannon is a DB's guy. We know that. He interviewed for the Broncos head coaching gig a while back, and he's been a DB's guy for the Vikings, and George Payton and he know each other, all those sorts of things. He's got a young group back there, and you want to see the Broncos' young receivers fare well against these guys.
Yeah, you do. And certainly, I mean, they added Will Johnson, who before he had that, I think that ACL injury, the knee injury at Michigan, I mean, he was primed initially. Conversations before that injury a couple of years ago, people are saying this could be the next Pat Surtain. This guy's probably going to be a top 5 draft pick. The injury dropped him a little bit, obviously. And so he lands in Arizona, and by all accounts, he's seemingly having a pretty good training camp down there in AZ there. And then you factor in, you got Buda Baker at the safety position, who's just kind of this weapon who can move around. Jalen Thompson's also another one of those younger players there. And then at the right cornerback spot, you got Max Melton, and in the nickel, you got Garrett Williams. I mean, this is a young unit that they're really kind of predicating on, I'd say, hybrid flexibility to play against the run and come up and tackle, but also be able to cover guys. And so I think you have that good versatility there. I look at Arizona's defense, and I think really at all three levels of that defense, they have some versatile players, including former Broncos friend here, Baron Browning, who's going to be returning to the Mile High City for a joint practice here this morning. But for me, I'm excited to see Cortland continue to work a little bit here against this Cardinals defense. But I think realistically speaking, I mean, am I speaking for everyone in Broncos country, or am I on my own here by saying we're all probably going to have our eyes on Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant as the two main guys we want to see make plays here this morning?
Absolutely. And we've talked about too how Devon Vele needs to kind of bounce back this week and make a few more plays. We want to see Trent Sherfield continue to build, because his role this season may be bigger than anticipated by really anybody, because he was expected to be a special teams only guy. So, but yeah, the focus is 100% on Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant. Can these guys continue to prove that they belong in the top of this rotation? Because right now it feels like those snaps are sort of up for grabs, right? We believe that Marvin Mims is going to be wide receiver 2 this coming season, or potentially could be. I mean, I know that there's a lot of lying that goes down on the initial depth chart, but that's where he was listed, right? So we hope that can happen. And Troy Franklin's just had the best camp out of maybe anybody on the team offensively in terms of just stacking those days, and in terms of, hey, we need a breakout from this guy. Well, he's given it to you so far. So let's see him continue to stack against another team. But also, like you mentioned with Pat Bryant, because The rookie made a nice third down catch against the 49ers, had a couple of plays that he made in that game. And you just feel like the more plays that he makes against other teams, the quicker he's going to have a bigger role for this offense. And I just believe that he does such a great job of finding openings in the defense, creating yards after the catch. He's got soft hands. He knows where the sticks are. He's got great body control, all these sorts of things. Let's see him go up against a Cardinals secondary that's got a lot of young guys in there trying to prove themselves as well and trying to build off what they did last year. Go up and make plays against those guys, and I think you will continue to earn the trust of this coaching staff.
One thing I love about Pat is that he does the dirty work, right? Like, he's not afraid to be, an engaged blocker. And I think it all goes back to what he said. I think it was at the Senior Bowl. He said, if I don't block, I'm not going to get the rock. And so you've seen him embrace the physicality there. But I'll even say, I'll go back to what he did in Wednesday's practice, the Broncos' second team offense there. And look, Jarrett Stidham's done great with that unit. Pat Bryant has done great with, I think, every unit he's worked with, right? Whether it's Bo, whether it's Jarrett, whether it's Sam Ehlinger, he is mixed and matched with all of these quarterbacks. And one thing continues to remain true. He's making plays. He's doing those little things that are going to be difference makers, I think, for this team. When you talk about needing to fight for, lost yards or an extra inch, Pat Bryant is a guy that's going to help the Broncos get those extra yards here instead of losing them, as to what Sean Payton has alluded to in the past. Like 2 years ago, he said we had a lot of hidden yards that impacted us in negative ways. Pat Bryant's the cleanup guy here. He brings his hard hat every day. One thing I think we are going to see here in this joint practice exclusively, and we heard this from Darren Rizzi on Wednesday, the Broncos special teams coordinator. He was talking about Pat Bryant and the roles that Pat has embraced in terms of being on special teams and getting more reps there here in practice. He said this is the week, probably in the actual game against the Cardinals, where you are going to see a more concerted effort to put Pat in on special teams to play some of these roles that Trent Sherfield is also playing as well. And so I'm excited to see him contribute in that aspect of the game. But this is a guy who makes plays. And in Wednesday's practice, there was a specific move the ball period with the second team offense with Stidham at quarterback, and Jarrett went to Pat on 3 consecutive plays. One play, it was a move the ball 2-minute high. Don't think there was any timeouts there from their own 40 going in, and he found Pat Bryant for about a 7-yard gain. They went up tempo quick. He fires a deep back shoulder throw to the left side, and Pat Bryant makes the play there in coverage. And then on the next play, he throws a goal line fade to Pat Bryant, who is interfered with by Quentin Newsome. So there's this evident, I'm throwing it to Pat. I know Pat's going to come down with the football. I'm loving what I'm seeing from the Broncos rookie receiver. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Troy Franklin. I'm excited about Trent Sherfield. I just think that this wide receiver room is in such a good spot right now, Sarah, with just the guys that can contribute. And it all seems like they are all willing to play their part. It doesn't seem like this room here is all about, I want to get my touches. And that was different. When Jerry Jeudy was here, Jerry wanted touches. And surely you and I were both on the show calling, get Jerry the ball a lot more, 100%. But you got guys now that are willing to say, you know what, even if I don't get the ball, I'm going to make a play here. I'm going to block. I'm going to set something up. I'm going to run a route. I'm going to be the decoy that forces the defense to bite up, and then we're going to make a big play. These guys are selfless in that room, and it's exciting to see play out, and nothing better than a competitive period here today to kind of put the little cherry on top.
Well, speaking of spreading the ball too, Cody, one thing that I'm also looking forward to is getting more involvement out of Evan Ingram. It feels like I haven't heard his name in quite a while when it comes to making plays at practice.
By design.
By design, right? So, yeah, Sean said after the first preseason game, they were going to try to get him more involved in the second preseason game, or I guess maybe potentially in this joint practice. And so he's one guy, too, that I'm excited to hear more about, but not at the expense of his health, obviously. We want to see Evan making plays in week 1 and then on, but obviously would love to hear his name called a couple of times and see what he can do when you're going up against another team.
I'm getting this question a lot on social media because a lot of fans are saying, how come we're not hearing a lot about Evan Ingram? It's been very quiet. And I will say, just based on my observation of practice, this is just from what I have seen and what I'm gathering, my interpretation of it, it seems like Sean, they're not doing a lot of the things to showcase what they're going to do with Evan Ingram, right? Because look, when you have training camp, people pay attention. Other teams from around the league pay attention. And of course you want to get some of these looks. They do walkthroughs in the evening, so they'll have a normal practice that we see. They're not doing this featuring him as much, I think, by design. I think Sean wants to kind of keep this joker in the deck. I made a little bit of a funny there, so to speak, when we're making the analogy. But Evan is going to be a big part of this offense. And I think that there's just been this concerted effort that let's not reveal our hand too early here. That at least is the vibe that I've gotten here from Sean Payton. Though I will say in the preseason game, we saw him run routes. I thought he came open a few times, did a really good job in that regard. Didn't see the targets. I also thought he blocked well too at the tight end position in line. So it's not like he's not doing anything. It's just we're being a little quiet here with Evan Ingram.
And I like that. I think that's great to keep that kind of, conceal that at this point in time. You don't want people to know, because you and I have talked about this. It's a role in the offense that is being created for Evan Ingram. Sean Payton actually confirmed that to Kay Adams when you and I talk about, well, what last year, based on last year, what role is Evan Ingram going to play? There was some thought early in the offseason that, well, he's going to play Lil Jordan Humphrey's role. And you and I kind of, we're like, that's not it. It's a role that doesn't exist or didn't exist in this offense until he got there. So now you're adding that wrinkle into the mix. It's going to be fascinating to see. But yeah, you're right. He came wide open on that 4th down play where Bo Nix made the play to Troy Franklin, and Franklin made a great catch. I saw Ingram was wide open on the other side too. So really good stuff from him, and really excited for this offense, as always, to be able to bounce back after what we saw against that 49ers preseason tape. That was just not, left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. I know they made some plays and they did some things well. They just maybe have a few tweaks here and there, but I think they're going to be excited to go out there and kind of prove that, hey, the defense, you're talking them up. Well, we want to make our case too, that you should be talking up the offense as well.
Well, in Broncos country, make sure you let us know which matchup on the offensive side of the ball between the Broncos wide receivers and Arizona Cardinals defensive backs that you have your eye on here this morning at joint practice. Plus, you'll get all the recap with a bonus episode following all the action as well. But coming up next here, we're going to be discussing the Broncos news and notes on the injury side of things. What's the latest with Nik Bonitto? Because we didn't see him for 2 days in a row. Will we see him here this morning for a joint practice? We'll go through that and much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at Monarch Money. And most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. Don't do that. That's why there is Monarch Money, because it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone.
If you're like me, you've definitely got accounts and subscriptions that you forgot that you're even paying for, right? And that's where I think Monarch Money can really help you out, because I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions that I wasn't even using. And canceling subscriptions like that, it saves you some money, saves you some peace of mind, allows you to continue to dream big with your finances and set goals for whatever it is that you want to do. So don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Nik Bonitto has not been in practice for 2 consecutive days after coming up apparently hobbled in Saturday's preseason win against the San Francisco 49ers. Will he be back at joint practices here this morning? We'll go through all that and some other injury news and notes with one player leaving practice on Wednesday. But Broncos country, thank you once again for tuning in, making us your first listen. Let's get into the action here. Obviously, everyone's eyes are on Nik Bonitto in a contract year where the stock is very high, certainly made a very strong case for himself in Saturday's preseason game. But we saw him come up hobbled. He was meeting with the trainer a little bit on the sideline, and we thought, okay, this is something to monitor here. Sean Payton said it was nothing that they're really worried about. He observed Tuesday's practice, and then for Wednesday's practice, he was back out there just wearing a jersey, observing practice once again through team stretch, individual period before he walked in to what I assume was to go get treatment. Now, we don't know what the injury exactly is. It could be foot. It could be ankle. Sean Payton said something along the lines of a foot thing, but we're eyeing to see if he returns to joint practices here today, especially as the Arizona Cardinals come into town. And I would anticipate if there is no plan right now to play him on Saturday, we may see all that action here today, but so much is contingent upon his status here this morning. And to be honest with you, we don't know if he's going to be practicing here today, but in your opinion, let's say he's not 100%, Sayre, which I think we can make a safe assumption on that based on, you roll an ankle or you have foot injury, you miss 2 days of practice. you're more than likely not 100%. Is this more of a ploy for the Broncos to protect their investment by not putting Nik out there? Or is this more of a, hey, we just got to get to the regular season? Where do you fall with this?
I think it could be sort of all encompassing in a way, Cody. And let me explain, because I feel like Nik Bonitto, obviously, with that 3-play stretch that he had against the 49ers, he showed like, okay, I'm ready to take it even to the next level. I made the Pro Bowl last year. I led the team in sacks last year. I've been on a heater since my second season, midway through the year. Like, this is where I'm at. Like, this stretch of 3 plays, purely dominant. Like, nobody could block him. So if I'm Nik Bonitto, and I even slightly tweaked something during that 3-play stretch, and we saw him go to the bench, slam down his helmet, things like that. But later we saw him jumping up and down on the sideline. If I even suffered a slight scare after having a great training camp, showed up to the entire offseason program, just saw 2 of my other teammates get huge contracts, if I even slightly stubbed my toe, I might consider holding in. If I was Nik Bonitto, we see other players doing this around the league. Terry McLaurin's showing up to practice. It's smart. It is. It's business. It's the NFL, and this is what you got to do. And Nik Bonitto, you got to strike while the iron's hot. His value is high right now. It may not be as high as somebody like Myles Garrett, who got paid, or TJ Watt, or even Micah Parsons, who's yet to be paid. Might not be there because those guys have proven over time they've done more. But for him, his value is extremely high. And we're talking about potential of upwards of 100 million. And I mean, I don't know how much exactly, Cody. I'm not privy to those discussions, but we're talking about tens of millions of dollars on the line here that would be significantly reduced if he would suffer any sort of injury in a contract year. And so if I'm Nik Bonitto, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, I don't want to make assumptions for anybody, but if I was him, I would be like, hey, I'm kind of going from what I was doing to a little bit of a hold in, because, you know, I tweaked my foot or whatever it may be, and I want to get paid now. So it's like, hey, I'm not risking anything else until I get that contract signed.
I agree with you 100%. I'm trying to remember if it was Quandre Diggs or if it was was it Jamal? No, it was Earl Thomas. My gosh, not Quandre Diggs. Earl Thomas. Remember when he was with the Seattle Seahawks and he showed up for training camp, still looking for a contract? What was it? Something happened, I think, in the preseason or regular season. And then, he's on the cart and he's flipping off the, there. I 100% agree with the ability to hold in here, because Nik deserves to be paid and the Broncos should pay him. And I understand that there's just a language stuff that, when you talk about contracts, both sides kind of have to be in agreement. And I don't think that they're far off. I don't think that Nik is going to go and ask for something that's astronomically out of realm here. I think Nik is going to look to get paid what he's deserved. And I think when you talk about tens of millions of dollars in guaranteed money, and if the Broncos want that and they know that they're going to do that, it's not like, hey, we're not going to do this. It's, we want to protect our investment. And Nik on his side is saying, well, I'm going to help you do that because I'm going to hold in. This is just an assumption. We're not saying Nik Bonitto was holding in. So before anyone goes crazy saying that we are saying that, we're not. We're saying if he did hold in, I would certainly understand. Sayre would certainly understand, because if you get banged up, then all of a sudden teams start to perceive, the value is not going to be as high. So this is smart if that's the case. But I think, like I said, I think with just the culture that this Broncos team has, what we saw with Cortland, with Zach, I think that there's very much the same sense here on Nik Bonitto. They want to take care of Nik. Nik wants to be here, and they're just going to protect him, and he's going to protect himself, which at the end of the day, he should. So, I'm curious where Broncos country feels, about what we've talked about here. But I want to also throw it to another conversation when we talk about injury news and notes. Damari Mathis left practice on Wednesday with the trainer, walked into the training room there. He did not return to practice. Not sure what was up. We didn't see exactly what happened on the play, but now adds another wrinkle here to the Broncos' depth in the secondary. And now it's affording other guys that we talked about, those undrafted guys, to get opportunities to make plays. And on top of that, more Chris Abrams drain.
More Chris Abrams drain, more Jaden Robinson. I'm excited to watch him again, Cody. You know about that. We talked about that after that 49ers game. I'm excited to see what he can do in stacking games, stacking weeks here, making plays, because he was out there making some plays. And for Damari, I mean, it's really tough timing because obviously he's got to put stuff out there on tape, not just for the Broncos to consider keeping him on the 53, but for other teams. Because if he hits waivers, I mean, that's nearly $4 million that some team would be claiming for this season in particular. That's a lot of money for somebody. And there are cornerback needy teams out there that would probably say, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. We'll take that flyer right now. We'll go ahead and pay whatever it is. And that money would then be off Denver's books, or maybe they could even trade him if he was healthy and playing well. I don't see a path to really any future long-term in Denver for him, but it's not good timing for an injury when he needs to be out there putting stuff on tape, showing that he can, has bounced back from whatever we saw him. He was hurt for a lot of last year, right? And he barely got on the field when he did come back. So we want to see what he can do out there, put that stuff on tape, impress the Broncos and everybody else. That it's just terrible timing. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, same here. I love Damari. Damari's always been so great to me. And look, I think anytime you play a position in the NFL and you have games Damari signed in his rookie season. He had a lot of action, and I thought he did really well in that action that he had. 2023 comes around. There's just, the ups and downs with the change in the defense that happened there. Damari gets benched. He's in the doghouse a little bit. He comes back, works his way on special teams, and gets more of an opportunity. Last year he plays in the dime a little bit for the Broncos. Then he hurts his back down the stretch of the season. And it's just injuries have kind of been a theme. And you've seen some of these other guys emerge. And unfortunately, you see this happen all the time in the NFL. I still think Damari can play high quality reps. I think Damari could be someone who goes to another team. If it's not Denver, I think he can play at a high level. And teams that I'm eyeing there is guys that right? I'm thinking Vic Fangio because of Christian Parker and the ties that you have there. I'm thinking Darren Muji and the New York Jets, who obviously are going to need that because I think Sauce Gardner's also a little banged up in training camp as well. Make sure you check out Locked On Jets. You want to know more information about that. But I'm very, very curious to see how this impacts maybe the rotation this upcoming week. Cornerback Reese Taylor, who plays primarily in the nickel, he also has been out with a hamstring injury. No Nate Adkins. We don't know what his injury is. So these are kind of the injury updates that we have here, and we'll see obviously what transpires here this morning as the Arizona Cardinals come to town for a joint practice. You get all the recap in a bonus episode later on today. So Broncos Country, stay tuned for all that ahead of Saturday's preseason game. But thank you so much for rocking with us, making us your first listen of the day, however you choose to do so. For your second listen, go check out our friends over there at Locked On Fantasy Football, wherever you get your podcast, especially with some of your big fantasy leagues, your drafts that are coming up, especially with our friends over there at Yahoo Fantasy. Go check out our friends over there, Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll see you later on for a bonus episode, Locked On Broncos.